Ms. B, the Dormitory Matron, and the Love Letters by Hyun Jin-kun, 1925. Revised for modern readers. Ms. B served as both teacher and dormitory matron at a girls' school. She was notorious as a rigid disciplinarian, a confirmed celibate, and a fiercely devout Christian. A spinster on the verge of 40, she possessed not the slightest trace of maidenly charm, so little, in fact, that one could scarcely find it even for medicinal use. Her face, freckled all over, was withered, coarse, dry, and sallow, calling to mind a mold-spotted, dried pollock. Her age was impossible to conceal. Her forehead lay bare, deeply scored with wrinkles. Her hair was so sparse that it could neither be properly parted nor pinned up, merely brushed back and clinging to the nape of her neck, like a knot of goat droppings, tight, dry, and starved of life. When she clamped her thin, pointed lips shut and fixed the dormitory girls with a cold stare through her magnifying spectacles, they would shudder and shrink back. She was severe, unyielding, sharp to the bone.
What Ms. B loathed, almost to the point of panic, were the so-called love letters. At a girls' boarding school, such letters were hardly unusual. Yet whether because the school itself was well known, or because it was filled with pretty students, letters brimming with desperate declarations of love, vowing to live or die, came fluttering in by the handful every single day. Since all mail addressed to the boarders had to be individually inspected, these letters inevitably passed through Ms. B's hands. Each time she laid eyes on one of those syrupy confessions, she would fly into a rage, her face flushing red and blue by turns, the hand clutching the letter trembling violently with fury. For a student who happened, through no fault of her own, to receive such a letter, it was nothing short of a catastrophe. The moment classes ended, she would be summoned to the matron's office. Ms. B, pacing back and forth with snorting breaths, like someone beside herself with indignation, would glare at the arriving student as though she meant to devour her. Then step closer and closer until they stood face to face, their noses nearly touching. The student, having no idea why she had been called in, but already terrified by her teacher's demeanor, would stand there helplessly for a while, before finally managing, in a voice no louder than a mosquito's buzz, to ask, Did you call for me? Yes, I did. Why? Ms. B snapped the words as if she meant to bite. Then, as though deeply offended, she dragged her chair toward her with a loud clatter, and dropped into it with a heavy thump. Catching sight of the student still standing there, she immediately shrieked again, What are you, a wooden post? Why can't you sit down? Teacher and student then faced each other across a small desk. Even after sitting, Ms. B said nothing for a while, only glaring at the girl, as if to say, you know exactly what crime you've committed. At last she drew out the letter, flung it down under the student's nose, and began her interrogation. Who is this addressed to? Since her own name was written plainly on the envelope, the student had no choice but to answer, It's addressed to me. Ms. B immediately demanded to know who the sender was, but as was usual with such letters, the sender's name was not clearly given. When the student hesitated and answered that she did not know for certain, Ms. B thundered, You mean you don't know who sends a letter addressed to you? She then forced the girl to read the letter aloud, to recite those shameful, honeyed words in her own voice. If the poor student, utterly naive and unguarded, timidly voiced even one of those sweet phrases, Ms. B's fury only intensified. She was determined to uncover exactly which scoundrel had written it. In truth, the man was someone the student had never seen or heard of, and she herself was entirely innocent. But no explanation would satisfy Ms. B. She shouted that unless the student confessed honestly, she would be expelled. That no man would ever write to a woman whose name he did not know, that such a letter could only mean the girl's conduct was improper, and so on, and so forth. At the very least, she would insist, the girl must have met the man somewhere. So how, exactly, had she come into contact with him? If the student, worn down to the point of desperation, ventured that she might possibly have seen him at a school-sponsored concert or bazaar, Ms. B would immediately press on. How did he look at you? What kind of eyes did he have? What was his expression like? What did he say to you? She would pry and probe into every last detail, coaxing and browbeating by turns, until the interrogation alone was enough to shave 10 good years off the girl's life. After more than 2 hours of questioning, Ms. B would launch into a heated sermon that men were creatures not to be trusted, that they were devils bent on devouring women, that all talk of love being free or sacred was nothing but lies invented by Satan. Worked up to a fever pitch, she would then drop to her knees on the dusty wooden floor, unwashed, since she slept on a bed rather than on the floor, and begin to pray. Tears would well up in her eyes as she invoked God the Father at the end of nearly every sentence, imploring him to save a young lamb about to fall into the devil's temptation, pleading and pleading without end.
The second thing Ms. B detested was the very idea of men coming to visit the dormitory students. Whatever the excuse, she would always find a way to refuse them entry. Even biological fathers or brothers were routinely turned away, under one pretext or another. School regulations, class hours, academic terms. Her conduct once provoked the students to stage a collective boycott, and she was even subjected to the principal's admonitions. Yet she made no attempt whatsoever to mend her ways.
That autumn, something strange came to light in the dormitory under Ms. B's supervision. Or rather, it might be more accurate to say that it was discovered rather than that it occurred. For only ghosts could know when the odd business had truly begun. Late at night, when the hour grew deep and all the dormitory lights had dwindled to pinpoints, and every student had sunk into heavy, exhausted sleep, sudden bursts of giggling and murmured whispers would leak into the darkness. It was not just one night or two. Students with light sleep sometimes heard the sounds, but half asleep. They mistook them for the rustling song of dry leaves rolling down the hillside behind the dormitory, or for the cries of wild geese flashing their wings in the moonlight. Others, seized by a momentary fear that it might be goblins at play, would wake a friend, only to reassure themselves that sounds travel far at night, that it must be voices from a neighboring house, or merely the sleep talk of classmates in another room. Comforted by such explanations, they would drift back to sleep. But the day came when the riddle began to unravel.
By coincidence, 3 students sleeping in the same room awoke at the same time. The first girl had risen to relieve herself and upon hearing the sound ended up waking the second and third. "Listen to that," she whispered, her eyes wide with fear. "What could that be in the middle of the night?" "I was startled by that noise last night too," said the second girl, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Do you think it's a goblin?" The third girl, the oldest of the 3 though she was no more than 18, and well known for her mischievous pranks, tilted her head and listened for a while as if she doubted her friend's alarm. "It is odd," she said at last. "I think I've heard it before. It's probably just some girls who can't sleep whispering to each other." At that moment, the strange sound suddenly burst into peals of laughter. In the dead stillness of the night, with not a ripple of any other sound, the voices carried with startling clarity as if spoken right beside them. "Oh, Mr. Tae-hoon, surely you don't mean it. It wouldn't be right." It was a woman's voice, high-pitched and coy. Ah, is it only now that you deign to recognize my heart? A heart that burns for you alone?" It was unmistakably the voice of a man aflame with passion. Then a stretch of silence. "Heavens, stop now. Isn't the kiss going on too long? What if someone sees us?" "The longer the better, surely. Even if I kissed you until my life ran out, I would not call it long. Still, if it must be short, I shall regret it." The man's fervent words were swallowed up by the woman's shrill, breathless laughter. There was no mistaking it. The reckless play of a man and woman drunk on love. That such a thing could happen in this dormitory, notorious for its ironclad discipline. The 3 girls looked at one another. Their faces still showed traces of shock and fear. Yet little by little their eyes began to sparkle with curiosity. The same romantic vision rose in all their minds. Perhaps the young man, longing to glimpse his beloved inside the dormitory, had been prowling around the school grounds day after day, until, unable to restrain his burning heart any longer, he waited for nightfall and leapt over the wall. Perhaps all the lights had gone out, and only bright moonlight, dusted like silver powder, lay upon the window panes. Perhaps a window had opened without a sound, and the woman lover had waved a white handkerchief to summon her man. Perhaps, like scenes one sees in the movies, a long strip of cloth had been lowered, one pulling from above, the other dangling below, swaying as he climbed. And so perhaps the two lovers met and whispered words of love, just as they had heard. A dreamlike feeling, bright and misty, enveloped the bodies and minds of the three girls. Their cheeks grew hot. Then the strange voices rose again. I won't have it. I simply cannot abide a man like you. My angel, my sovereign, my very life, you dry my soul to dust. You shatter my heart with those lips that hold my destiny. Shall we go and take a look? The mischievous third girl sat up and made the suggestion. The other two rose with her, tempted yet hesitant, exchanging glances tangled with doubt, fear, and curiosity. After a moment, they quietly opened the door and slipped out.
Their toes crept forward like rice weevils, inching with excruciating care toward the source of the sound. In the dark corridor, the pale figures of the three girls moved noiselessly, like shadows. It was not difficult to find the room. But once they did, they stopped short, as if carved from wood. That such sounds should be coming from a room only a few steps from theirs. That it should be the dormitory matron's room. The very room of Miss B, who could scarcely swallow her food at the mere thought of men. From within came the man's frenzied lament. My angel, my heaven, my queen, my life, my love. You'll dry my soul to death, you'll tear my heart apart and kill me, with those lips that hold my very life. The third girl boldly cracked the door open. Through the narrow gap, 6 eyes shot into the room. The light was still on. The bed was littered with envelopes from the students' love letters, their contents scattered in disorder. And there sat Miss B, alone, utterly alone, upright on the bed. She spread her arms wide as if to draw someone into an embrace. Her glasses lay aside, her nearsighted eyes fixed intensely on empty space. On her dried Pollock face rested an expression of unbearable yearning. She puckered her lips as if awaiting a kiss and murmured fervent endearments in a man's voice. Then, abruptly, she twisted away, fluttering her hands, as if fending someone off, and adopted a sharp, girlish tone. I won't have it. I simply cannot abide a man like you. She burst into shrill laughter. Then she snatched up a letter, one of the students' love letters, and rubbed it against her cheek. Is it true? Do you really love me that much? Do you love me as you love your own life? Me, of all people? As she writhed and coquettishly posed, her voice unmistakably trembled with sobs. Oh my goodness, what on earth is that? The first girl whispered. She must be mad, said the second. Why would she get up alone in the middle of the night and do such a thing? Oh, the poor thing. The third girl murmured, brushing away the tears that had welled up without her knowing.
It's time to study new words in context. 1. Rigid. Definition: very strict and not willing to change. Example: the teacher was rigid and did not allow any mistakes. 2. Disciplinarian. Definition: a person who is very strict about rules and behavior. Example: the coach was a disciplinarian who expected perfect behavior. 3. Celibate. Definition: not having a romantic relationship or not marrying. Example: he chose to remain celibate his whole life. 4. Spinster. Definition: an older woman who is not married, old-fashioned word. Example: people in the past often called an unmarried older woman a spinster. 5. Even for medicinal use. Definition: not enough to be useful, even as medicine. Example: the soup had no flavor, not even enough for medicinal use. 6. Coarse. Definition: rough and not smooth. Example: the fabric felt coarse on my skin. 7. Sallow. Definition: having a pale yellow and unhealthy color. Example: her face looked sallow after being sick. 8. Pollock. Definition: a type of fish, often dried and used in cooking. Example: dried pollock is common in Korean food. 9. Scored. Definition: marked with lines or cuts. Example: his forehead was scored with deep wrinkles. 10. Sparse. Definition: very thin or not much in amount. Example: her hair was sparse and easy to see through. 11. Nape. Definition: the back part of the neck. Example: her hair was tied at the nape of her neck. 12. Shudder. Definition: to shake suddenly because of fear or cold. Example: she shuddered when she heard the strange sound. 13. Unyielding. Definition: not changing or not giving up. Example: he was unyielding and refused to listen. 14. Sharp to the bone. Definition: very strict or harsh in attitude. Example: the manager was sharp to the bone with his workers. 15. Brimming. Definition: full to the top. Example: the glass was brimming with water. 16. Fluttering in. Definition: coming in lightly and quickly through the air. Example: leaves came fluttering in through the window. 17. Syrupy. Definition: too sweet or overly emotional. Example: the letter was full of syrupy love words. 18. Nothing short of. Definition: exactly that thing, without any doubt. Example: the test was nothing short of a disaster. 19. Beside herself. Definition: very upset or emotional. Example: she was beside herself with anger. 20. Indignation. Definition: anger because something feels unfair or wrong. Example: he felt indignation when he was blamed unfairly. 21. Devour. Definition: to eat or take in quickly and eagerly. Example: the child devoured his meal. 22. Demeanor. Definition: the way a person behaves and appears. Example: her calm demeanor made others feel safe. 23. With a heavy thump. Definition: making a loud, heavy sound when hitting something. Example: the book fell with a heavy thump. 24. Shrieked. Definition: shouted in a loud, high voice. Example: she shrieked when she saw a bug. 25. Browbeating. Definition: trying to control someone by speaking harshly. Example: the boss kept browbeating his workers. 26. Detested. Definition: strongly hated or disliked. Example: he detested waking up early. 27. Admonitions. Definition: warnings or advice to stop doing something wrong. Example: the teacher gave many admonitions about being late. 28. Dwindled to pinpoints. Definition: became very small or almost disappeared. Example: the lights in the distance dwindled to pinpoints. 29. Goblin. Definition: a small, imaginary, scary creature. Example: the child was afraid of goblins in the dark. 30. To relieve herself. Definition: to go to the bathroom, polite expression. Example: she left the room to relieve herself. 31. Peals of laughter. Definition: loud and repeated sounds of laughter. Example: the room filled with peals of laughter. 32. Coy. Definition: pretending to be shy in a playful way. Example: she gave a coy smile. 33. Deign. Definition: to do something you feel is below you. Example: he did not deign to answer the question. 34. Fervent. Definition: showing strong and sincere feeling. Example: she gave a fervent speech. 35. Ironclad. Definition: very strong and cannot be changed. Example: the rules were ironclad. 36. Prowling. Definition: moving quietly while searching for something. Example: the cat was prowling at night. 37. Excruciating. Definition: extremely painful or very difficult. Example: he felt excruciating pain. 38. Stopped short. Definition: suddenly stopped moving because of surprise. Example: she stopped short when she saw the scene. 39. Frenzied. Definition: very wild, excited, or out of control. Example: the crowd became frenzied. 40. Coquettishly. Definition: in a playful and slightly flirtatious way. Example: she smiled coquettishly. 41. Welled up. Definition: filled with emotion, especially tears. Example: tears welled up in her eyes.
Comprehension questions. 1. Who is Ms. B and what roles does she have at the school? Answer: Ms. B is both a teacher and the dormitory matron at a girls' school. 2. How is Ms. B described in terms of personality and beliefs? Answer: she is very strict, cold, unmarried, and a deeply religious Christian. 3. What does Ms. B hate the most? Answer: she hates love letters sent to the female students. 4. Why are many love letters sent to the school? Answer: because the school is famous and has many beautiful students. 5. What does Ms. B do when she finds a love letter? Answer: she becomes very angry and calls the student to question her. 6. How does Ms. B treat the student during the interrogation? Answer: she speaks harshly, forces the student to read the letter aloud, and asks many detailed questions. 7. Why can the student not give clear answers about the sender? Answer: because the sender's name is often not clearly written, and the student does not know him. 8. What does Ms. B believe about men and love? Answer: she believes men are dangerous and that love is a temptation created by the devil. 9. What does Ms. B do after questioning the students? Answer: she gives a long sermon and then prays to God with strong emotion. 10. How does Ms. B treat male visitors to the dormitory? Answer: she refuses to let them in, even if they are family members. 11. What strange event begins to happen at night in the dormitory? Answer: students hear laughter and voices whispering late at night. 12. How do the students first explain the strange sounds? Answer: they think it is wind, animals, neighbors, or someone talking in their sleep. 13. What do the three girls imagine when they hear the voices clearly? Answer: they imagine a romantic meeting between a man and a woman. 14. What shocking discovery do the girls make? Answer: they discover that the voices are coming from Ms. B's room. 15. What is Ms. B actually doing in her room? Answer: she is alone, acting out both the man's and woman's voices while reading love letters. 16. How do the girls feel at the end of the story? Answer: they feel pity and sympathy for Ms. B. 17. What does the ending reveal about Ms. B's true feelings? Answer: it shows that she is lonely and secretly desires love.